Hey man, one of the most confusing experiences many men go through in dating is realizing that the women they care about the most often seem to fall the hardest for men who create emotional chaos in their lives. You'll see it happen over and over again. The calm, respectful guy who treats her well struggles to keep her interest, while the man who is unpredictable, emotionally distant, and sometimes even frustrating somehow becomes the one she can't stop thinking about. And for a lot of men, this realization feels almost insulting to everything they were taught growing up. They were told that kindness, honesty, and reliability would naturally make them desirable partners, but when they actually step into the real world of dating, they begin noticing that attraction doesn't always respond to those qualities the way logic says it should. The reason this pattern appears so often has less to do with morality and more to do with psychology. Human attraction is deeply connected to emotional stimulation. The brain remembers feelings that are intense far more than feelings that are calm and predictable. When someone creates emotional turbulence in a relationship, moments of uncertainty, excitement, frustration, and sudden affection, the emotional experience becomes more vivid in the mind. It creates highs and lows that keep the person constantly thinking about the connection. Even when the experience isn't entirely positive, the emotional intensity itself keeps the relationship feeling alive in the person's thoughts. Now, that doesn't mean women consciously seek out sadness or emotional instability. Most women would never describe their ideal partner as someone who makes their life more stressful. If you ask them directly, they would likely describe someone stable, supportive, and emotionally mature. And in the long term, those qualities absolutely matter for building a healthy relationship. But attraction in the early stages of dating often responds more strongly to emotional excitement than emotional stability. The brain interprets intensity as significance. When someone triggers strong emotions, whether positive or negative, the mind starts assigning that person more importance. Think about the way many people remember relationships that were emotionally turbulent. Even years later, those experiences often remain vivid in memory. The arguments, the moments of distance, the sudden bursts of affection afterward, all of it creates a dramatic emotional storyline. Meanwhile, calmer relationships that lack that intensity sometimes fade from memory much more quickly. The brain is wired to remember experiences that produce strong emotional reactions, and unfortunately that biological tendency can sometimes make chaotic relationships feel more meaningful than stable ones. For men observing this dynamic, it can feel incredibly confusing. They may watch a woman stay emotionally attached to someone who clearly treats her inconsistently while ignoring the man who is offering her genuine stability and respect. And from the outside, it can look like she is choosing emotional pain over emotional peace. But the deeper reality is that emotional unpredictability can create a powerful psychological loop. When affection appears unpredictably, sometimes present, sometimes absent, the mind begins chasing the moments when that affection returns. This psychological loop is similar to how people become attached to things that are inconsistent. When rewards appear randomly rather than consistently, the brain becomes even more focused on pursuing them. That's why people can become so emotionally attached to relationships that feel unstable. The occasional moments of affection feel more intense because they contrast so strongly with the periods of distance or uncertainty, and that emotional roller coaster keeps the person mentally invested far longer than they expected. Meanwhile, the man who provides consistent emotional stability often doesn't create that same roller coaster experience. His behavior is predictable, his affection is steady, his presence is reliable. And while those qualities are incredibly valuable in long-term relationships, they don't always trigger the same immediate emotional intensity during the early stages of attraction. The brain interprets consistency as comfort rather than excitement, and comfort, while important later on, doesn't always generate the same spark that emotional unpredictability does. This is why many men begin feeling frustrated when they try to understand why certain relationships develop the way they do. They see themselves doing everything right, while someone else seems to create stronger attraction through behavior that appears careless or emotionally distant. But the difference often lies in emotional tension. The man who remains slightly unpredictable, unintentionally, keeps the emotional dynamic alive, because the woman never feels completely certain about where she stands with him. And again, this doesn't mean men should try to intentionally make women unhappy or manipulate their emotions. That kind of behavior only leads to unhealthy relationships in the long run. The real lesson is understanding that attraction isn't fueled purely by kindness or logical compatibility. It is fueled by emotional engagement. When a man lives a full life, maintains independence, and doesn't revolve entirely around the relationship, he naturally creates a dynamic where the woman remains curious about him rather than completely certain about every aspect of the connection. In many ways, what women are responding to in those turbulent relationships isn't sadness itself, it's emotional intensity, the feeling that something powerful is happening between two people. The intensity doesn't have to come from chaos or emotional instability. It can come from passion, ambition, confidence, humor, and the sense that the man in front of her is someone who has his own direction in life. When that kind of energy exists, attraction grows without needing the destructive turbulence that so many unstable relationships are built on. What many men eventually realize after watching this pattern long enough is that the issue isn't really about women wanting pain or sadness in their lives. It's about the emotional movement those turbulent relationships create. When a relationship has highs and lows, uncertainty and excitement, the emotional experience feels alive. There are moments where the woman feels confused, moments where she feels thrilled, moments where she feels frustrated, and then moments where everything suddenly feels passionate again. That constant emotional movement keeps her mind engaged with the relationship, even when it's exhausting. Her brain keeps replaying interactions, trying to understand what the man is thinking, what the next interaction will feel like, and whether the connection is improving or falling apart. Meanwhile, the man who offers calm stability can unintentionally create the opposite experience. His behavior doesn't generate those emotional spikes. He treats her well consistently. He communicates clearly. He shows interest without creating confusion. From a logical perspective, this should make him the ideal partner. But in the early stages of attraction, the brain doesn't always reward logic. The brain rewards stimulation. When interactions become too predictable too quickly, the emotional energy of the relationship can flatten out before deeper attachment has had time to grow. This is why many women will later say something like, "He was a great guy, but I just didn't feel that spark." And that statement often confuses men because they equate being a good partner with naturally creating attraction. But attraction and compatibility are not the same thing. Compatibility determines whether two people can build a healthy long-term relationship. Attraction determines whether someone feels emotionally pulled toward the other person in the first place, and attraction is often driven by emotional intrigue rather than by stability alone. Now, here's where things become even more interesting. When a woman experiences a relationship filled with emotional turbulence, she often ends up thinking about that man far more than she would think about a calm partner. The reason is simple. Unresolved emotional experiences occupy more mental space than predictable ones. When someone behaves inconsistently, the brain keeps trying to solve the puzzle. Why did he act that way? What did that moment mean? Does he care or doesn't he? And that constant analysis keeps the emotional connection alive, even when the relationship itself isn't healthy. This psychological pattern explains why some women stay emotionally attached to men who clearly don't treat them well. It's not that they consciously enjoy being mistreated, it's that the emotional roller coaster has created a powerful mental habit. Their mind becomes conditioned to expect sudden bursts of emotional intensity, and those moments can feel incredibly rewarding when they happen after periods of uncertainty. Over time, the brain begins associating that intense emotional relief with attraction itself. For men who are observing this from the outside, the experience can feel incredibly discouraging. They start wondering whether being calm, respectful, and emotionally steady is actually working against them. They may even consider imitating the behavior of the emotionally unpredictable men who seem to attract more attention. But trying to imitate emotional chaos usually leads to unhealthy relationships for everyone involved. The goal isn't to create sadness or instability. The goal is to understand the psychological dynamics that make someone emotionally engaging. The men who eventually navigate this dynamic successfully are the ones who develop a strong sense of independence. Their lives don't revolve entirely around the relationship. They have goals, passions, routines, and ambitions that continue whether the relationship grows or fades. And that independence naturally creates a level of emotional intrigue. A woman interacting with a man like that doesn't feel like she already knows everything about him. She senses that he has a world beyond the relationship, and that makes her curious about how she fits into that world. This kind of emotional intrigue creates a much healthier form of attraction than the turbulence we talked about earlier. Instead of chaos, it produces curiosity. Instead of frustration, it produces fascination. The woman begins thinking about the man because she enjoys discovering more about him, not because she is trying to resolve emotional confusion. That distinction is incredibly important because curiosity builds attraction while still allowing the relationship to remain emotionally stable. Another thing that happens when a man lives with this kind of independence is that his attention naturally becomes more valuable. When someone's life revolves entirely around the relationship, their attention feels constant and predictable. But when someone has a full life, their attention feels intentional. The moments they spend with you feel like a choice rather than a default, and people naturally value attention that feels chosen rather than guaranteed. So the deeper truth behind this pattern isn't that women fall in love with sadness or emotional pain. It's that they are responding to intensity, intrigue, and emotional engagement. When those elements appear in unhealthy forms through chaos, unpredictability, or emotional distance, the attraction can still develop, even though the relationship itself becomes unstable. But when those elements appear in healthier forms through confidence, independence, passion, and curiosity, the attraction grows without needing the destructive turbulence that so many chaotic relationships rely on. Once a man begins understanding this dynamic, he starts seeing many past relationships in a completely different light. Situations that once felt confusing suddenly start making sense. He remembers moments where he tried harder and harder to make things calm and secure, believing that stability would strengthen the connection, only to watch the woman slowly lose interest anyway. At the time it felt unfair, almost like the rules of attraction were backwards. But when you look deeper, you realize that the relationship had become emotionally flat before a deeper bond had time to form. There was no curiosity left, no emotional discovery. Everything about the dynamic had become clear too quickly, and once the mystery disappeared, the emotional energy that once made the interaction exciting began fading as well. And this is where many men make a critical mistake in response to that experience. They assume the solution is to become colder, more distant, or intentionally confusing. They believe that if emotional turbulence creates attraction, then they should behave unpredictably on purpose. But that approach rarely leads to healthy relationships either. Creating artificial drama might generate attention for a short period of time, but it eventually erodes trust and emotional safety. The real lesson isn't about causing pain. It's about maintaining a sense of emotional depth and independence that keeps the relationship dynamic rather than stagnant. Think about the difference between emotional turbulence and emotional intrigue. Turbulence is chaotic. It creates stress, uncertainty, and instability. Intrigue, on the other hand, is something entirely different. Intrigue comes from depth. It comes from knowing that the person you're interacting with has layers that are slowly revealed over time. When a man has his own ambitions, interests, and inner world that he isn't constantly explaining, he naturally creates that sense of intrigue. A woman interacting with him doesn't feel like she has the entire emotional map of his personality after just a few conversations, and that sense of depth is incredibly powerful in attraction. Humans are naturally curious about people who seem to have complexity within them. When someone feels too easy to understand too quickly, the emotional engagement often fades because there is nothing left to explore. But when someone reveals themselves gradually, through experiences, through shared moments, through observation rather than constant explanation, the connection develops in a way that feels far more engaging. Another reason emotionally turbulent men sometimes create strong attraction is because they unintentionally maintain a strong sense of independence. Their lives don't revolve entirely around the relationship. They continue doing what they want, pursuing their own interests, and focusing on their own direction. That independence creates a feeling that the woman must participate in the relationship rather than simply receive constant attention from him. And that subtle shift changes the emotional balance between two people in a way that can keep attraction alive. The men who understand this dynamic learn how to maintain that independence without becoming careless or emotionally distant. They don't chase attention obsessively, but they also don't withdraw completely. They show interest naturally, without feeling the need to constantly prove it. Their focus remains balanced between their own life and the relationship, rather than collapsing entirely into the connection. And that balance creates a much healthier emotional environment than the chaotic turbulence that unstable relationships rely on. Over time, this mindset also changes the way a man views rejection or fading attraction. Instead of seeing it as proof that he wasn't good enough, he begins recognizing that attraction is influenced by many factors outside his control. Timing, emotional readiness, personal experiences, and even life circumstances all play a role. Two people can be good individuals and still fail to create lasting attraction if the emotional dynamic between them never develops the right balance. And this awareness allows him to approach relationships with far less anxiety. He stops trying to force emotional outcomes through constant reassurance or dramatic expressions of feeling. Instead, he allows the connection to grow naturally through shared experiences and gradual emotional discovery. If the attraction deepens, he welcomes it. If it fades, he accepts it without losing his sense of self. That calm confidence becomes one of the most attractive qualities he can possess, because it shows that his emotional stability does not depend entirely on the relationship. Ironically, this calm stability combined with independence often creates exactly the kind of emotional engagement that chaotic relationships try to produce artificially. When a woman interacts with a man who is grounded within himself, she begins feeling curiosity rather than certainty. She wants to understand him more. She becomes interested in how his world works and how she fits into it. That curiosity fuels attraction in a way that is far healthier than the roller coaster of emotional turbulence. And ultimately, that is the deeper lesson behind the pattern many men observe in dating. It isn't sadness or chaos that creates attraction, it's emotional engagement. Turbulence is simply one unhealthy way that engagement sometimes appears, but when a man lives with purpose, independence, depth, and calm confidence, he creates engagement without the chaos. He becomes someone whose presence feels intriguing rather than predictable, and in the long run, that kind of attraction is far more powerful and sustainable than any relationship built on emotional instability. The moment a man truly understands this dynamic, something shifts inside his perspective about relationships. He stops chasing the illusion that attraction is purely about being the best possible partner on paper, because if attraction worked that way, the calmest, kindest, most supportive men would always be the ones women felt the strongest pull toward. But life clearly shows that it doesn't work that way. Attraction is far more emotional and instinctive than that. It responds to energy, presence, confidence, and curiosity. It responds to the feeling that the person in front of you has depth you haven't fully explored yet. And when a man begins carrying himself with that kind of grounded independence, he stops trying to manufacture attraction and instead allows it to develop naturally. One of the biggest differences between men who struggle in dating and men who seem to create attraction effortlessly is how they handle emotional certainty. Men who struggle often try to remove uncertainty as quickly as possible. They want everything clearly defined. They want reassurance that the woman feels the same way. They want to eliminate the risk of rejection by confirming the relationship early. But the men who create attraction more easily often do the opposite without even thinking about it. They allow the emotional space between two people to exist for a while. They don't rush to label every feeling. They don't need constant confirmation of where they stand. And that patience keeps the emotional dynamic alive. Another powerful realization men eventually reach is that attraction grows strongest when both people feel like they are participating in the discovery of the relationship. When one person invests emotionally far faster than the other, the balance shifts in a way that can quietly weaken desire. The slower pace of mutual discovery allows both individuals to feel curious about each other at the same time. That curiosity becomes the engine that keeps the relationship moving forward. Each new experience adds another layer to the connection rather than overwhelming it with emotional intensity too early. This is also why men who live with strong personal direction often create a different kind of attraction altogether. When a man has goals he is pursuing, passions he is developing, and a life that continues evolving outside of the relationship, he naturally becomes someone whose presence feels dynamic rather than static. A woman interacting with him senses that she is stepping into a life that already has momentum. She becomes curious about where that life is going and how she might fit into it. That curiosity keeps her emotionally engaged without requiring chaos or instability to maintain excitement. Compare that to the man whose entire emotional focus becomes centered on the relationship itself. His conversations revolve around her. His attention is constantly directed toward making sure she feels valued and secure. While those intentions come from a good place, they can unintentionally create a sense of emotional saturation. Instead of feeling like one meaningful part of his life, the relationship begins feeling like the center of it. And when someone feels like they are the entire focus of another person's world, the emotional challenge that fuels attraction often disappears. The men who navigate this balance well understand that attraction grows best when both individuals maintain their own identity within the relationship. They don't abandon their goals or routines simply because they are dating someone. They continue pursuing their ambitions, spending time with friends, developing themselves, and building their lives. The relationship becomes an addition to their world rather than the replacement for it, and that independence naturally creates a sense of intrigue that keeps the emotional dynamic alive. Another thing that changes when a man adopts this mindset is the way he handles emotional uncertainty. Instead of viewing uncertainty as something that must be eliminated immediately, he begins recognizing it as a natural part of attraction. Early relationships are supposed to contain a degree of mystery. Both people are learning about each other gradually. They are observing behaviors, sharing experiences, and discovering whether their personalities truly align. When that process unfolds slowly, the emotional connection tends to deepen more naturally, and perhaps the most interesting part of this transformation is how it affects the man himself. When he stops trying to force emotional outcomes and begins focusing on living a meaningful life, his confidence becomes much more genuine. It no longer depends on whether a particular woman is interested in him or not. His self-worth becomes anchored in his direction, his values, and his personal growth. That inner stability changes the way he carries himself in every interaction. Women often respond strongly to that kind of grounded presence because it signals emotional maturity. A man who is comfortable with himself doesn't need constant reassurance. He doesn't panic when the relationship moves slowly. He doesn't feel compelled to chase approval or prove his value repeatedly. Instead, he interacts with calm curiosity. He enjoys the connection while allowing it to develop at its own pace, and that relaxed confidence often creates far more attraction than intense emotional effort ever could. In the end, the deeper truth many men eventually discover is that attraction isn't created through sadness, chaos, or emotional turbulence at all. Those things simply mimic the emotional intensity that attraction requires, but true attraction grows much more naturally when a man lives with independence, depth, and quiet confidence. When he builds a life that already has purpose and momentum, his presence alone becomes engaging, and when that kind of presence meets genuine compatibility, the relationship develops through curiosity and mutual investment rather than through the exhausting roller coaster of emotional instability. And when a man begins living with that kind of grounded independence, something interesting happens in the way women perceive him. His presence begins carrying a quiet weight that is difficult to explain, but easy to feel. He's no longer trying to prove himself through constant effort or emotional explanations. Instead, his actions feel deliberate and calm. When he gives attention, it feels intentional rather than automatic. When he spends time with someone, it feels like a choice rather than a need. That subtle difference changes the emotional atmosphere of the relationship completely, because people instinctively value attention that feels chosen rather than attention that feels guaranteed. This is also the moment when many men finally break out of the exhausting cycle of trying to figure out women. For years, they may have approached dating like a puzzle that needed solving, constantly analyzing behaviors, trying to predict reactions, adjusting their personalities to match what they believed women wanted. But once they understand that attraction is largely about emotional energy rather than perfect behavior, they stop trying to control every outcome. They start focusing on becoming a more complete version of themselves rather than trying to become someone else's ideal. And ironically, this shift often creates stronger attraction than all the previous effort combined. Because a man who is comfortable with his own identity naturally communicates confidence without trying to manufacture it, his conversations become more relaxed, his humor becomes more genuine, his presence becomes easier to enjoy because he isn't constantly monitoring whether he's doing everything right. That relaxed authenticity often feels refreshing to women who are used to interactions where people are trying too hard to impress each other. Another powerful effect of this mindset is that it removes the pressure from the relationship itself. When a man no longer treats every interaction like a test of his worth, the entire dynamic becomes lighter, conversations flow more naturally, shared experiences feel more enjoyable. The relationship stops feeling like something that must constantly be maintained through emotional effort. Instead, it becomes something that grows gradually through time spent together. And when relationships grow through shared experiences rather than constant emotional explanations, the connection often becomes much deeper. Instead of hearing how someone feels repeatedly, the woman experiences those feelings through the man's behavior. She sees his consistency. She notices how he treats people around him. She observes how he handles challenges and responsibilities. Those observations create a far more authentic understanding of who he is than any speech about his emotions ever could. This process also allows the woman to invest emotionally in a way that feels natural rather than forced. Because she is gradually discovering the man through real experiences, her feelings develop alongside that discovery. She becomes curious about him. She wants to know more about his life, his goals, his thoughts, and that curiosity creates the emotional engagement that keeps attraction alive over time. At the same time, the man who understands these dynamics becomes far more selective about the relationships he chooses to pursue seriously. He stops chasing connections that clearly lack mutual interest or emotional compatibility. Instead of trying to convince someone to see his value, he simply observes whether the relationship feels balanced and genuine. If the interest is mutual, he continues investing naturally. If it isn't, he moves forward without resentment. This ability to walk away from imbalanced relationships is one of the most powerful forms of confidence a man can develop. Not because it makes him cold or indifferent, but because it shows that his sense of self does not depend entirely on another person's approval. He understands that attraction must exist on both sides for a relationship to thrive, and when that balance is missing, forcing the connection rarely creates the outcome he truly wants. Over time, this mindset creates a completely different experience of dating. Instead of feeling like a stressful competition for someone's attention, relationships begin feeling like natural interactions between two people exploring compatibility. There is still excitement, there is still curiosity, but there is also calm stability beneath the surface, because neither person feels like they must chase the other desperately to maintain the connection. And ultimately, this is the deeper truth behind everything we've discussed. Women don't fall in love with sadness or emotional chaos itself. What they respond to is intensity, intrigue, and the sense that the man in front of them has depth that continues revealing itself over time. Emotional turbulence simply imitates that intensity in an unhealthy way. But when a man lives with purpose, independence, and quiet confidence, he creates the same emotional engagement without the chaos. And that kind of attraction built on curiosity, respect, and genuine connection has the potential to grow into something far stronger than the unstable relationships that rely on emotional storms to feel alive.